Hey, what is up, mortals? It is T. Daniel Morris here with a new video for you. In this video, we'll dive into the various water jutsu from the Naruto anime. I just wanted to greet you guys first by saying, sit back and relax. You're in for a treat. So, let's get started. In today's deep dive, we'll be exploring an important aspect of the Naruto universe, specifically jutsus. Last time we talked about jutsus, we covered fire jutsu. Luckily, you don't need to see the videos in order, so you can just check that one out after this video is over. Or you can check out that video first. Either way, we'll give out a brief description of Naruto, chakras, and jutsu for both the uninitiated and those who need a refresher course. Naruto is a shonen action manga. It's about a young boy named Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto lives in a world full of people capable of using fantastical abilities called jutsu through the use of chakra, a sort of magic system. In this world of shinobi, Naruto wishes to one day become the Hokage, the strongest ninja of the village and its leader. Unfortunately for Naruto, he is saddled with the burden of the nine-tailed fox spirit, a monster made out of chakra that killed many people and damaged the village on his day of birth. Naruto must both prove his skill and his worth to his peers and the people of the village. In order to be a splendid ninja, one must have hard work, dedication, and a good skill set. In the world of Naruto, most ninjas rely on various powerful jutsus, and today we'll be covering water jutsus. Water jutsus cover any jutsu that utilize the water release element. It is one of the 5 basic nature transformation jutsus, which also include fire, wind, lightning, and earth. As opposed to fire jutsus, which are normally only summoned through the user's mouth, a user of water jutsu often utilizes water in the environment, although a skilled practitioner can create and expel water from their bodies using chakra. The second Hokage, Tobirama Senju, is a famous example of a water release master, and his capability of producing his own water was one of the aspects that earned him the spot as Hokage. Water release is typically used offensively, either for battering opponents with sheer force and volume of water, or slicing them with high-pressure spouts or blades shaped from the water. But unlike fire-style jutsu, which is almost exclusively offensive, water-style jutsus have plenty of defensive and utility-based options, allowing a water specialist a large repertoire of options in a fight. For the water specialist hopeful, we'll now cover the jutsu. Like before, there are a few ground rules. We'll be looking primarily at the water jutsus in the manga that were actually ranked, and we'll be avoiding water-related Kekkei Genkai and combination jutsus of multiple elements. This means a technique like Haku's Ice Release, being a combination of water and wind nature chakra, is not considered for this ranking. With that out of the way, let's get started. Most jutsus are ranked from E to A and then up to S rank in terms of power. In keeping with the theme and the advanced nature of elemental manipulation, the lowest ranking will be D. For water jutsu, following its nature as a more versatile art than the mostly offensive fire jutsu shows its only named D-rank technique in the manga, the hiding in mist technique. This technique has the user fill the air with mist and control its thickness with their chakra. When the mist was thick enough, the opponents could not see. That, in turn, meant that their ability to defend against the user's attacks was weakened. The mist can be created from either water in the surroundings or the user themselves, which the user exhales from their mouth. If the mist is thick enough, it can cancel out even the enhanced vision powers of the Sharingan or the Rinnegan. While in the anime, Byakugan users can see through the mist, in the manga, it's impenetrable to all but Sensor-type ninja. Despite the D rank, this jutsu is extremely versatile, but it relies on the combat skill of its user more than anything else. Moving on to C-ranked jutsus, we have the Water Release Gunshot. This is an all-range water technique that has the user create water within their body using chakra. The user spits the water from their mouth as orb-shaped projectiles, whose destructive potential is determined by how much chakra the user can place into the bullet. The projectile travels quickly and deals an extensive amount of impact damage. As shown by Gamabunta, the chief toad of Mount Muboku, jumping into the air can allow the user to increase the power of the water release gunshot by adding gravity to the power of the blast. But in the case of the chief toad, part of the power of the technique comes from the sheer size and chakra level of the legendary toad. The water release water bullet technique is a very versatile and simple technique. The user needs chakra into their stomach, then they expel a large quantity of water in the form of a blast. It is a technique that can range in power and strength with the amount of chakra needed into it. but it is also capable of collaboration with other users of the technique, increasing the level of power. The water release wild water wave has the user spit water from their mouth like a waterfall. The technique washes away the target and the water can be controlled with chakra. While the technique is very basic, it has several variations based on the user's skill level and creativity, making it a jutsu capable of offense, defense, and utility. The water release waterfall basing technique literally creates a waterfall by developing spring water. The unique part of this ability is that it creates the water without the use of water veins. The current then creates a wave. This technique has no real combat advantage, instead used for rest and relaxation, making it a technique that, while impressive, is honestly more flash than substance. It was, however, used once to help Naruto train one of his most powerful jutsu, but that's another story. Water Release Wild Bubble Wave has the user spit out a large volume of foam-like bubbles. These bubbles cover the ground and reduce its friction, limiting the opponent's movements. The bubbles are strong enough to wash away most attacks, such as oil and fire techniques, or double as cover, the opaque foams becoming a smokescreen. Water Release Starch Syrup Capturing Field is an ability that follows the trend of utility over damage. As opposed to Wild Bubble Wave, which reduces friction and makes the opponent slip, the capturing field creates water of high viscosity, sticking opponents to the ground like a giant fly trap. While this technique doesn't do damage to an opponent, it's a very efficient crowd control move. Halting your opponent's moveset, slowing them down, or causing momentary distraction are all applications for this technique. While it's not a directly damaging jutsu, its applications as a defensive and utility technique place it up past most other C-ranked water jutsu. The water prison technique is a technique that is relatively difficult to gauge in terms of strength. It is definitely one of the strongest C-ranked water techniques, but much like the next C-ranked technique on the list, its use is based more on the person who creates it and the person who is captured. The technique creates a sphere of water, either drawn from the surroundings or expelled from the user. The water from the sphere is heavy with chakra, halting the user's movements and breathing. There are only a few ways to break out of the prison by oneself in the series, both of which involve disrupting the sphere via chakra or water techniques. The biggest weakness of the technique is the fact that the user must stay in contact with the sphere in order to keep its form. They could offset this weakness by having clones do the job, but ultimately the one who cast the technique was as much a sitting duck as the person they were fighting. A way to offset this weakness is to seal the jutsu into a scroll, which then traps someone who doesn't have permission to read it into the seal. The water clone technique is a very versatile and powerful jutsu. It is in many ways similar to Naruto's signature technique, the Shadow Clone Jutsu. The water clone is physically real and can interact with others and even perform the jutsu of the user who made it, though the water clone has a glaring weakness. It is only about a tenth as strong as its user. When destroyed, the clone will either melt into water or disperse into mist, adding a bit more utility to the situation. One final debilitating weakness for the water clone is that it cannot stray too far from its maker, making it simple to just run away from it if the creator is unable to move from their current location. This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Staying safe online is an ever-growing difficulty and hackers could exploit you. NordVPN allows you to change your IP address, making you harder to track, securing your privacy. In addition to providing you with safe passage through the web, you can also expand the reach of your favorite streaming services. Have you ever tried going through 2, 3, or even 4 streaming services to watch your favorite anime? Well, with NordVPN, you can change your country and be able to binge shows like My Hero Academia, Naruto, and many others on your favorite streaming service with just the press of a button. Check out the link in the description to get 72% off when buying for 2 years. That's only $3.29 a month. Remember, this deal is for a limited time. And thank you to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Starting off the B-ranked jutsus is the Water Release Water Dragon Bullet technique. It has the user mold water into the shape of a dragon, which is then aimed directly at the target. The water crashes upon the target, dealing physical damage. This technique can use either water from the environment or water created by the user's molded chakra, changing the strength and versatility of the technique depending on your environment. It is definitely a powerful technique, but has a glaring weakness when not fully mastered. It takes a whopping 44 hand seals. With every second mattering in a fight, it takes just a bit too long for this technique to be useful to anyone who can't master the skill. The technique, when mastered, however, requires much fewer hand seals, but it is still held back by the length of time required to summon it. Water Release Water Shark Bullet technique has the user create a shark out of water and chakra that rapidly rushes towards the opponent. It can deal a good amount of damage on impact and doubles as a means of rapid transportation, carrying the user forward much faster than they're able to swim to quickly enter or escape combat within the water. Much like the Dragon Bullet technique, it creates a creature out of water that deals a good amount of impact damage. But unlike the Water Dragon, it does not need nearly as many hand seals. Water Release 5 Feeding Sharks has the user put their hands on a surface of a body of water. Chakra is released from the technique, creating 5 ferocious sharks from the water. The sharks have high speed and sharp teeth, making it difficult if not impossible to avoid them if one is already trapped inside the water. To make the move even more troublesome, the sharks can regenerate from the water around them, making them difficult to destroy. This technique requires large amounts of chakra to produce, but when created, it can be a dangerous technique to deal with. The 1,000 Flying Water Needles of Death creates, as the name implies, 1,000 long needles from nearby water. The needles then surround the target, and its user aims the needles, firing them at rapid speeds. Targets struck by the needles suffer a significant injury. This seems to be a technique of the Yuki clan, as it is only used by one person in the whole series, Haku. The technique's versatility is not just in its potential lethality, but in its control, as Haku is able to launch these needles in such a way to incapacitate his opponent into a death-like state, as opposed to outright killing them. Unlike some other techniques, this technique explicitly requires water from the environment due to the sheer number of needles created, and thus it is not very strong in a location without a good amount of water. Water Release Water Formation Wall creates a barrier of water to defend the user. It is produced when the user needs chakra in their stomach and launches out the water, which then spirals and circles around and above the user. Anyone within the water wall is defended, and the technique is both defensive and utilitarian, pushing back any enemies in the initial blast, and creating a transparent barrier that lasts as long or is as strong as the user's control and chakra will allow. The Water Fang Bullet utilizes the environment much like the Needles of Death in 5 Feeding Sharks technique. The user forms projectiles made of highly pressurized water, which are then launched into the enemy. When over or within the water, the projectiles can be shot at the target from any direction, ideally in the opponent's blind spot. This technique can be used in tandem with other techniques to confuse and overwhelm the opponent, catching them off guard or dealing lethal damage. The Water Gun technique is a technique used by the Hozuki clan, known for their ability to turn into the water through a secret clan ability. The user makes a finger gun, and through their hydrification technique, compresses a drop of water into their index finger, firing it with tremendous force and speed, similar to a gunshot. It has enough power to pierce flesh and kill at close range, but is capable of striking the opponent from all ranges. Each bullet uses a very small level of chakra, and thus can be shot rapidly. However, it requires the Hozuki clan's hidden hydrification technique, so it is not available to most ninja. The Water Release Great Water Arm Jutsu is another technique used by the Hozuki clan. Using hydrification, they are able to enlarge the muscles in their arms. By gathering moisture from the rest of the body, they can grant superhuman strength to one arm. But in exchange, the user is put off balance due to the shift of moisture. The raw strength in that arm, however, is enough for the user to break through solid rock walls, steel doors, and other similarly hard and tough objects with ease. But it requires a great deal of control, both of one's body and of one's chakra, in order to use effectively. Water Release, Dustless Bewildering Cover, is interesting in that it is developed by a village other than the village hidden in the mist. It was developed by the second Tsuchikage, the Kage of the village hidden among the stones. It allows the user to completely erase their presence using water vapor to bend the light around the user. The technique, when mastered, causes the user to be almost undetectable by normal senses or even chakra sensors. This technique, despite not doing any direct damage, is honestly broken. There are only a few ways to detect Mu, either through ocular jutsu or the ability to detect the vibrations in the ground, making this a dangerous assassination technique. At the end of the day, the shinobi of Naruto are ninjas, and more often than not, the person you face on the battlefield isn't always going to be the most powerful opponent. The ability to defeat your opponent before they can detect you or even react is more important than simply having an overpowered jutsu. The only reason, however, for this technique to not be at the top as far as powerful jutsus go is its weakness to ocular techniques. If the jutsu was perfect in its ability to hide someone, it would be the most powerful jutsu, but otherwise it can still be considered high up on the tier list. Water Release 1,000 Feeding Sharks is like the 5 Feeding Sharks technique, but on steroids. This technique summons 1,000 water sharks but carries them toward the enemy via a massive wave of water. This takes away the weakness of needing to be within the water to be attacked by the sharks, as the water is launched forth toward the opponent. However, like many other water abilities, it likely requires the user to have obscenely high levels of chakra or be very close to a body of water large enough to create that many sharks. Water Release Exploding Water Colliding Wave is an extremely powerful and useful technique. The user spits out a massive amount of water, engulfing and crushing the enemy in its waves. The user then can ride on the waves, moving at high speeds to attack an enemy who has been thrown off balance. The technique requires massive amounts of chakra, but some users have been capable of creating lakes or even small ocean-sized volumes of water in even the driest of locations. The biggest strength of this technique is the ability to use the remaining water in the area to then utilize other water jutsu, which can now use the water sent out by this technique in tandem with water generated by the user. The Water Release Great Waterfall technique creates a massive deluge of water. It raises the water high into the air and then crashes it down on your opponent with enough strength to hollow out the ground, washing and wiping away everything in that area. This technique can be launched as a spinning vortex, crushing and spinning everything within it, making the opponent contend not just with the technique itself, but any debris it now carries. Or it can be launched as a massive projectile, capable of damaging opponents who manage to dodge the initial impact, but not escape the sheer volume of water. This technique gives off the impression of a natural disaster, which makes it worthy of its designation as an A-rank technique. The strongest A-rank jutsu is also the strongest water-style jutsu. The Water Release Great Shark Bullet technique is an upgrade from the Water Shark Bullet technique itself, but comes with a unique quirk. It is capable of absorbing the chakra of the opponent's technique, making it the ultimate offense, defense, and utility for clashing against similarly powerful or weaker jutsus. A jutsu that absorbs the chakra of other techniques means that until this attack impacts with something and is dispersed, it can continually get stronger if countered with other jutsu. The only counters known to this ability are either avoiding it or striking the user before they can release the jutsu. For a tactical mind, this technique is truly the ultimate trump card. Outside of rankings, there is a list of hidden clan techniques used by the Hozuki clan based on their signature technique, hydrification. It allows the user to liquefy any part of their body at will, from their hair to muscles. This technique alone is defensive, offensive, and utilitarian. Any impacts will cause the user to burst into liquid and reform, nullifying the physical damage they receive. They can liquidize to sneak into buildings or up to people, camouflage themselves, increase their physical ability via the Great Water Arm technique and its derivatives, launch dangerous water techniques using their bodies directly, or even drown enemies within their own selves. However, the techniques have two weaknesses. The Hozuki clan is thus vulnerable to lightning release techniques, and if they pass out, their bodies will take on a jelly-like state. If captured and placed into a sealed container, the Hozuki clan member is both unable to move, reform, or escape on their own. Despite the versatility of many of these techniques, in my opinion, the strongest jutsu will be the Great Shark Bullet technique. A jutsu capable of both devastating damage on its own and greater damage due to being able to counter any jutsu thrown at it by absorbing the chakra from other techniques makes it extremely versatile. Jutsus used as a counter-offensive will merely empower this attack. Jutsus used as a defense will then be nullified and absorbed. Jutsus used to hide the opponent would also be absorbed if in direct contact with the gigantic shark summoned by this technique. In the world of Naruto, jutsus became increasingly massive, requiring more and more chakra. As far as techniques go, given sufficient timing, this technique can possibly stop any chakra-based technique thrown its way, with its only possible weakness being the relatively slow startup time and massive chakra required to unleash the technique. It is not as devastating as the Thousand Feeding Sharks technique nor the Great Waterfall jutsu, but its unique property to absorb chakra provides the edge in most jutsu matchups. Thank you all for indulging yourselves in all this information thus far. I hope you enjoyed it. Now there are a few more things that I'd like to go over before this video ends. Firstly, if you're in the mood for some great storytelling, We the Celestials has got you covered. Our We the Celestials My Hero Academia and Naruto What If channels retell the story of their namesake anime with a bit of a twist. Check it out if you're interested. Secondly, on behalf of We the Celestials, I'd like to thank everyone involved in the production of today's awesome content. Their details can be found in the description below. And lastly, if you're interested in what we do here at We the Celestials, I'd like to extend you an invitation to join our team. The only caveat being that we only accept members from 16 years and up to join our crew. You can sign up for whichever category fulfills your interests by joining the recruitment Discord using the link in the description below. We're always looking for new members to join us. Well, that's it from us for today's video. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.